and now is the time when we should proceed. Therefore, I would like to announce that the Salt Lake Temple will be closed effective December 29th, 2029. It will remain closed for a period of approximately 4 years. Is that the only mistake I've made all day? December 29th, 2019.
2019.
Is that clear? Okay. Not next year, but this year.
An unsere deutsche Nation! Unser deutsches Volk Sieg heil! Sieg heil! Sieg heil! Sieg heil! An unsere deutsche Nation! Unser deutsches Volk Sieg heil! Sieg heil! Sieg heil! Sieg heil!
Alright, this is Travis Wayne Goodsell. I keep coming up with ideas for videos when I want to do other things. So, frustrating, and yet at the same time that's who I am. I get ideas, I get inspiration, and I keep trying to warn the world of the great danger we're all in. And I hope by now you guys realize that I'm right and you're wrong. So you better start listening. For some weird reason, it's taken all this time to realize that my VLC player does not play or identify these direct camera feeds. Even though they're in an MP4 format, it's not the right MP4 format for VLC. And so this morning when I was trying to access videos for the video I was going to do for you guys here, it was not playing. It would just pause and just be a still frame, and it wouldn't work, and I didn't understand why is this not working. And I thought it may be the camera, and tried restarting the computer and checking online what's going on, and saying, oh, it's the driver, oh, and then finally I said, okay, well, let's save it in my movie maker and see if that does any different. And sure enough, it plays my movie makers. And so then I Googled again and found out, yeah, VLC does not recognize these direct feeds from my camera. And so that explains the other month when I was trying to get a video feed of the wall damage to the neighbors, along with the sign with the tagging on it for the video I was doing about tagging in my neighborhood, in your neighborhood. And yeah, that now explains everything. And so it's not the computer, it's not the camera, it's the VLC crap player. I remember the good old days where I had, was it an E-machine or the cow box computer I had. One of those had an awesome movie player. I was able to do all sorts of stuff with it, if only they had the technology to download and convert DVDs like they were able to do with rip CDs back in those days. So could have had a lot of fun back in those days. But yeah, now I have to settle for VLC. Windows, There's that line at the bottom when you try to do a still frame shot. So that ain't no good either. So yippee-ki-yay, here we are in modern technology with crap. And so that's what today's video is on, is what would happen if people did the right things from the beginning. How would our life be different if we had done the right thing from the beginning? And so if you've watched my videos, you'll know that there used to be a picture right here and it's gone. Oh, it's like the Simpsons, watching Chief Wiggum's son in the background and he's doing stuff and you got to pay attention. So no, she's the point and focus of this video. And so I was trying to get video footage because things have happened that have not been productive for the scanning that I've done previously. And so I was trying to get a better picture for the computer so that I can put it on here. And since I failed because of VLC, yeah, I was able to go back and get a couple of shots, but I'm not happy with any of them. So they're not the picture quality here. Here it is, and see it. I got the glare from the camera and all that, so that pisses me off. That's why I got to do a scan, which I could hook up, I guess, and I've got to do that eventually to get some other stuff going for other videos, like doing reviews of all those books over there, as well as digitize them into a PDF format, or JPEG if they contain Egyptian pictures. So I have that technology available to me, and I've been wanting to get around to that last year and never got around to it. But fortunately, the end of the world is being delayed, so I'm being given lots of time to get to some of this stuff. It's just that there's so much stuff to get to. So, yeah. And so, this is Leanne Murdoch, and this was the New York Cabaret. I've done the video where I showed Rick's, now BYU Idaho, and completely destroyed. They're making way too many changes. It's no longer the school I used to go to. Just like Lethbridge, which is now an archaeological dig. It's gone. Which I couldn't believe that when I was doing that video live to show you my old homestead with the video that I was doing, and hey, where is it? Not only that, but the whole hospital in McGrath, gone. The fire department, gone. The post office, moved. Oh my God, what happened? The whole town just got deserted. Those were the livelihood for the towns. You know, like coal industry. You know, they have a coal mine, and the town is built there based on the coal miners. It's all for them. And so when the coal mine shuts down, everybody in town is out of work. The whole town's gone and it's destroyed. That's what's going on up in Alberta. McGrath has lost their main businesses, and Lethbridge has lost its university, and so I guess people are forced to make long commutes into Calgary to work now, because Zellers is gone in Lethbridge. There's 2 car dealerships for Dodge, and there's, I think it was a Chrysler. I can't remember what the other one was when I was doing the video. Those are the main sources of jobs, other than the hockey rink. Everybody can be assured to have a hockey rink in their town to keep things going, I guess. But man, and so I don't know how they're surviving, if they're surviving at all. I mean, even the McDonald's up and closed shop and moved to the Burger King location. And you know, it's bad when McDonald's has to close down one of their stores and move into a more central location. And especially when the dollar store goes out of business. So Canada's hurting, I guess, or at least Alberta is. And well, anyway, Leanne Murdoch, if you remember from my other videos, and if you're here for the first time, I'll go over it all again for you. And no, I'm not going to give you sources. This is me just talking about my life. We're just talking here. This isn't an actual professional video of a Hollywood-style movie-making documentary where I have to have credits at the end. That's the whole point of these videos, is to warn you guys of the end of the world and how you guys have been misled into your pursuit of truth. And so anyway, particularly Mormons is who I'm referring to here, if you are unfamiliar with my video content. Yeah, born and raised Mormon. Both my parents, alt-right, Nazi Republican, white supremacist, hardcore Mormon. And so, as much as other Republicans who are not Mormon hate to admit it, I'm sorry, but Mormons are just like you guys. They have the conservative mindset of extreme fanaticism, and so they don't like abortions, just like Christians don't like abortions, but it's for a different reasoning. See, in the Mormon Church, the theology is that God places a spirit into a body, and God doesn't make mistakes. He doesn't put a female spirit in a male body, if you know where I'm going with that. And the church has homophobia because of the theology. And I've already talked about Pete Buttigieg, who screwed it up for you LGBT. And if you missed that video, I'm not going to go over it here, because we're talking about changes in your life if you'd done the right thing in the beginning. And so, because of the extreme authoritarianism of my parents, I wanted nothing to do with them. I was the rebel. I wanted freedom. I wanted justice. I wanted liberty. And I did not want to be controlled, manipulated, and forced to live a life that I didn't want to live. Because that's what happens when you have an alt-right, white supremacist, hardcore Mormon, authoritarian parents. That's a horrible life, and it's one of slavery. And sure enough, my mom's dad's side of the family come from the plantation owners who had slaves, and so that's where my third great grandmother comes from, where she was a teenage girl working as a slave to my third great grandfather on his plantation, and rape ensued, and baby was born that eventually led to me, and so it was a huge embarrassment, and they had to conceal the disgrace to the family name, and thus I don't have any inheritance through that plantation line. And so the only inheritance that I did end up getting from my grandfather was Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto, and a few silver pennies from World War II. And those were rightly gone and destroyed. Well, I sold my collection to my dad for $100, which he got to steal. But I was desperate for money, and realized that coin collection was not the course in life that I wanted, a numismatic. Anyway, besides, I had to give up some of it to the ex as extortion payment for her abducting the kids and taking them out of the country from me. But that's where I get to the Leanne, is because my life is now this. And it wouldn't have been this had I actually followed through and married Leanne. Leanne Murdoch is from the Murdoch Automotive here in Utah. I need to find a picture for the cover photo here, or for the thumbnail for the video, and we'll find it. Let's see, Murdoch Automotive Group, Utah. Oh man, that's right, it's Cartoon Day. I gotta go through the political cartoons for the week. Alrighty. Murdoch, no regrets. We'll use that. Okay. And okay, so I'll stop this video, insert the picture so that I can talk about it, about how my life may have gone had I chosen to marry Leanne, which would have been an excellent choice, far better than Stephanie. As much as I had 3 great kids who now think I'm the devil because of the brainwashing of their mother. But again, I would have had kids through Leanne, and thus would have been better. So, yeah, sorry kids. It's all my fault, but yet at the same time, you can't really blame me. You have to blame your mother. All right, hold on. Okay. I got the first part of the video all set up, and I realize I still have some clips to establish as part of my intro. Alright, Murdoch, if you saw, has no regrets that has been added to their slogan, and so it fits perfectly with the topic for the day, is that if you do the right thing in the first place, you have no regrets. And so even though my kids were awesome and the memories I had with my kids were awesome, I would have had other kids and those memories would have been awesome also. But having done the right thing in the first place by marrying Leanne would have produced a better outcome than choosing Stephanie, whose intentions were wrong in the first place. And I got sucked into it because of wanting to escape my family. And so when I met Leanne, it was on a rainy day, and I think it was lunchtime. It may have been dinner, hard to tell during a rainstorm. But I didn't bother with an umbrella. I love the rain. I'm singing in the rain. I'm vibratoing. And yeah, I was going to the cafeteria in the Man-Waring Center, crossing campus, which used to have my famous light pole, now gone, thanks a lot. And so yeah, that light pole stood as a symbol for me when I first went to Rick's, my first year before my mission, then coming back to Rick's after my mission. And so it was sad to watch through maps.google how they've destroyed the place. Even my old homestead of the bunkhouse, which was where I ended up moving to the second quarter, I think. Yeah. Maybe. No. Yeah. Maybe. Can't remember. I think I stayed with my grandparents when I got off my mission, to cut back on the cost of having to pay. Yeah, that's, yeah, because, yeah. Yeah. And, yeah. Okay. And so, yeah, the bunkhouse I moved to after Christmas for the second semester. All right. Now that we got that straight. And so the, what was her name? Yeah, well, it may not be necessary to the story. So I going to eat at the Man-Waring Center in the rain, and from behind me, as I'm reaching the steps to go up into the Man-Waring Center, a voice from behind me says, "Do you want an umbrella?" And of course, who is that angelic voice? You know, that type of thing. And I turn around, and it surely was an angel, and she just stuck her umbrella over the top of me, and we ended up having our meal. Still can't confirm whether it was lunch or dinner, but we ate together, and we hit it off, and come to find out, she was Relief Society president. Let's see, fraternity is guys, is it? Or sorority? I never got involved in any of that stuff. And so, having taken Greek and Latin, I should know these sorority. That says boys. Okay, so it's probably fraternity. But fratrilineal line is the father. Fraternity. Freshman dead after hazing. Yeah, if there's dead and hazing going on, it's most likely guys. And I don't see any pi symbols for any of the fraternities, so. Yeah, brotherhood. So she was the president of the sorority. I cannot take a bite. I'm laughing hysterically. So, and she ended up being Woman of the Year for that year. And she also was in child development, and so she had a lot of assignments for her classes that were make craft assignments, because you're supposed to learn how to teach little kids, and that involves crafts. You don't talk to kids, they get bored. And so, because we didn't have the modern technologies of, well, we had TV. We didn't have the internet with all these app things and streaming services. So, yeah, you had to do crafts back in our day. So, Colin, if you're listening, understand that you're too young to know what a craft is. So, so she was clearly busy, literally busy. Rick's also had established a new system when I got back of a humanities course requirements. And everybody had to do these core requirements in order to graduate. And they involved going to old black and white foreign films and watching plays and basically getting a broad cultural experience. And so I saw My Fair Lady, for example, that they put on at Rick's, and watched black and white foreign films. Trying to catch up to the subtitles in English to try to figure out what are they doing. And so yeah, she had to do that also, along with all her other stuff that she was involved in. And so she literally was up early in the morning and not back until late in the evening, 7 days a week. You know, and she was living in the dorms, and so there's curfews. You can't enter during the nighttime. I believe 10 o'clock was curfew at night. Could have been 9:30. Most likely 10. And so she literally was gone from her apartment first thing in the morning all the way till 10 at night. And yet, because of that chance meeting, she made time to incorporate me in her schedule. And a lot of things that we shared, such as eating at the Man-Wearing Center, or doing the Human Resource Core Requirements courses, and the dances, we were able to do that together. And so it's, as much as people tend to pick on Mormons for Brigham Young University, it's really a crash course in dating, whereas out in the world, you date a person once a week, but at Rick's, you can spend all day with a person if things get coordinated just right. And if anything, you can see a person every day if you can't see them all day. And so you really get to know a person quick. And there are plenty of diverse opportunities and activities to get a fuller view of who a person is at a quicker pace than out here in the real world. And so that's one of the advantages with a Mormon school system dating meat market, and is that people tend to impose world views like, no, you need to take this slow. You don't know this guy. You just started dating him. You know, don't unlock your chastity belt for him yet. and those types of things. And it doesn't really apply, because you're sometimes in the same classes with the other person, and you get to do activities together, and course requirements together, and there's other activities. And if you have connections like I did, you can go to the hot springs, which is where I did the video where I found out they destroyed Rick's. Because my cousin and her husband run that place. And so lots of stuff to do up in southeastern Idaho. And now they have a temple there. So for Mormons, that's like ultimate paradise now. If only the church would have done the right thing and stuck with Joseph Smith rather than Brigham Young murdering him, as the title I've given when I had to come up with a title for this video when I was putting everything together, ended up being. And so, yes, even though I'm talking about my life, it has a direct impact as I'm talking to you Mormons. That the church would have been completely different had Joseph Smith not been murdered. And that whole succession crisis would never have happened. And everything would have been different. And so that's what I'm getting to here, is that even though you can't regret the parents you have, and you can't regret the children you have, you can regret that you could have taken a different path if you'd done the right thing in the first place. And so what did I do to ruin my life? See, if you've heard my other videos, I had no clue what I was going to go into at Rick's. Career aptitude test in high school came up negative for everything, even janitor. And so the reason is because they didn't have archaeological fields in their questioning. It was all practical jobs, jobs that society wants you to conform to. And that's why I didn't get anywhere on their tests, is because I had already grown up in a conforming family, and I wanted nothing to do with that. And thus the career aptitude tests did not factor that into the equation. And if they had done that, they would have realized, oh, he likes the stuff from his religion, which involves the ancient Middle East. And so archaeological questions around the Middle East could have identified where I really wanted to go because of the religion that I was born and raised in. And that would have had me realize, oh, I want to get into Hebrew, Greek, and Egyptian. Not just with the languages, but the cultures. And that would have solved everything. And instead, I had to go on a search quest for a school that would offer that education. I had to create it from the schools I went to. And so Rick's didn't do anything for that, but the University of Lethbridge did. And so that only would have been made available by making the wrong choice and not marrying Leanne. And so that's an interesting twist on my life, is that I would never have gone into the field of study that I inwardly wanted and loved to do had I not made the wrong choice. So that's a Twilight Zone episode, I think, we've got here in the making. A Sliding Doors movie sequel. And maybe that's what I should use for the thumbnail, Sliding Doors. Let's take a look at that while I'm continuing to talk here. Sliding Doors movie. And so, cute Gwyneth, back in her pre-abused days. Alright, we'll use that one because that's wider rather than the vertical pictures for the movie covers. Okay. So if you don't understand why I like that movie, you haven't heard the video about Beth from Michigan. So, yeah, don't get me going on that one. I'm going to cry. All right. So, yeah, she was perfect, Leanne. And had I followed through and chose to marry her, I would have then had a different life than I have now. I would not have been a decipherer in Paleo-Hebrew. I would not have been a decipherer in Egyptian petroglyphs, because they all lead together, from choosing not to marry Leanne and choosing Stephanie, who introduced me to Canada and free babies and getting paid for babies and getting paid for being poor and getting a cheaper education that was it's now gone. It was a top 5 school in the world at that time. And yeah, so it's an interesting twist. And you can speculate and say, well, no, God would have set things up in motion for you to do all that anyway if you'd made the right choice. No, I can already tell what would have happened. Leanne and I, she would have introduced me to Utah. My parents were in Southern California. I was far, far away in Southern Idaho. I did not want to go back with my parents. And so I would not have taken Leanne to California to pursue a life in California as we stayed with my parents. No, that would have been bad. And so she would have been the one to have taken me to Utah, similar to Stephanie taking me to Canada. And so in Utah, her parents lived in South Salt Lake on the east side, and yes, I looked up where her house was, and she comes from the family of automobile dealerships, and so you probably would be seeing my face on the Murdoch commercials. And no, I would not be encouraging the lame commercial of the interviewing process of needing to say the Murdoch line just right. That was lame, guys. Lame. But I would not be happy being a car salesman, even if I was put into management because of marrying Leanne. No. You know, you would have seen me doing those commercials, if you remember, those of you who are my age. So Colin, you don't know them. Maybe I should see if I can find a link to those old commercials where the guy would have lions and a circus going on at his car dealership, and he's yelling at the camera, "Come in and buy a car today! No down, no payments for 30 days, and blah, blah, blah." Just hilarious. And you just go, okay. And so, yeah, you would have seen me do that kind of stunt rather than these videos warning you of the destruction of the world with the takeover of my parents' authoritarianism. And so that was the one option. The other option would be, because I don't like doing sales, despite my name, I would have possibly gone on to the University of Utah. Not BYU, Utah, because it was really right close to her parents' household anyway. Almost walking distance. It would have been walking distance for me because I did a lot of hiking and walking and all that stuff and running. And so I probably could have done that. And so there wouldn't have been much need for a car at the beginning. But with her and her quality upbringing, air went out. I'm going to pause so I can turn it back on. Okay, I don't have central air in this place. We have an air unit right here in the living room only. And so in order for me to breathe, it requires to have the air running 24/7 so that it circulates the air in the apartment and so that it doesn't go stale and that I don't have my breathing problems. And so anyway, and so we would have been staying with her parents most likely. It's unclear as to whether or not they would have required us to pay. I didn't know her parents. If they did, Leanne probably would have had to go out and get a job. She probably would anyway, because of the economic conditions that we live under, where the economy forces couples to both work in order to have a basic living. And then when you want kids, you've got to have better paying jobs for both of you. and that's just a real mess with our economy. And so she most likely would have gone out and gotten herself a job as well, and possibly going to school, but I doubt it. I would have been the one to get the debt from student loans to pursue a career field of some kind, and knowing U of U's availability of career fields, I would have not known what to get into. And so it may have turned out similar to the University of Lethbridge, where I found piecemeal classes in philosophy and Hebrew. And so, yes, maybe I would have come across deciphering Hebrew, because I would have recognized Joseph Smith's translation from the King Follett Discourse, but would have pursued a different course in trying to study it and research it, because the University of Utah does not have a philosophy of science like the University of Lethbridge did. And so I would have been utilizing unsound methods of trying to figure it out. So again, I would have been better having made the wrong decision in the career field that I was destined to be in, because the University of Utah does not teach people how to learn. It's a regurgitation thing. You have to learn what they tell you to learn, and it's you regurgitate, and it's based on your memorization abilities. That's your grade here in the United States, especially Utah. And thus people are dumb because they're not taught how to learn here in the United States. And so you may be a great memorizer, and you may have lots of things memorized, and you may have street cred with whatever career field you've gone into, but I'm sorry, you're not that smart. And so a BYU education, for example, is the worst education in the universe. They're not a top-ranked university as a result. And so I would have been influenced, most likely, to Hebrew and Egyptian, because I would have found Eva Vasilevska in the early days, before her health problems kicked in when I finally got there in the 2000s. And so it would have been the mid 1990s, where I would have gone to the University of Utah, and so I would have still had my University of Utah education and would have done better in Hebrew, but they still wouldn't have had enough courses for a career in Hebrew. And so that would be extra. It would be picking and choosing the classes rather than going through a course curriculum. It hasn't been activated because I haven't reset the printer to the internet. And so, yeah, I may have figured all this out, but I wouldn't be as smart as I am now. It would have been a different method of learning the same outcomes. And I would have had different kids with Leanne. I would be in debt because of the economy that we have here, despite being able to live in her parents' place, most likely. Parents would have expected me to graduate and then move on to a career so that I can get out of their house and help prosper and give a life to their daughter that they would like to have for her. But yeah, the career field would have been tough because Amazon was not available back then with their KDP publication, and CreateSpace is what they first started with. That wouldn't have been available back then. I would have had to have waited, and yeah, things would have been different as a result. So after I graduated at the University of Utah, which I don't know what kind of a degree I would get, because they cut off your funding after 3 full years. They say, hey, what are you doing there if you're not getting a degree? So yeah, the United States really sucks in the education of their people. And so I would have gone without a bachelor's, most likely, and would have had to have again settled for working at the church. I could have gotten any other job here in Utah, but it's not unlikely that I would have also gotten a job working for the church. Let's see, if I had married her in 1992, we would have gone to the University of Utah and spent 4 years. Probably would have gotten away with 4 years of education. I think that's, well, let's see, 2004 to 2008. No, they didn't let the student loans last that long. So, yeah, but yeah, it would have been interesting. It would have been a different president. So different rules for student loans. Yeah, it would have been at least 1994 or 1996 if I were allowed the full 4 years to go there. And so that was still before, well, it would have been right around the announcement of the conference center to be built, I think. Just a year or so before, because it took several years, didn't it? And so, yeah, and the Olympics were 2002. So, yeah, it would have been a different life. Some similar characteristics because of who I am, but there would have been some major differences. I would have been working for the church most likely before the other people came to work there, and that would have made a great big difference. And so I would have been promoted. Excuse me. I was up late last night, if you didn't pay attention to my last video last night. And would have elevated myself up in the chain of command at the church office, church built employment. There may have been CES attempts to teach seminary and institute, but not likely. It's tougher here in Utah. And so even though I would have had the skills to do so, they most likely wouldn't have accepted me, other than to say, well, yeah, we've got this place opening in Nigeria. We'll transfer you there. We don't need you here in Utah. So that is another possible outcome, but not likely. So, uh, yeah, it would have been interesting to see how long it would have taken me to actually study church history, as I did. Uh, but without my philosophy of science education, I would not necessarily have recognized the problems. I did recognize some stuff because of contradictions, and was uh, smarter than your average Mormon because of that. Smarter than your average bear. Hey, boo boo. But yeah, it would have been a different life and a curious one. Whether I would have prospered to take care of a family, or whether that would have collapsed as well. Uh, Not likely, because Leanne was of a higher caliber than Stephanie, because of her background. And so, and so when you apply this uh, to the church, uh, just think, what would have been different? Because Joseph Smith would not have uh, done the creation, fall, drama plays in the temple. We would not have any of the Freemasonic connections in the temple. There wouldn't be the current establishment of an administration. It would be a different administration. And we would still have maintained the doctrines that he was promoting. He would have been pursuing more Egyptian records, having time to work on getting those translated. So we would have had the book of Joseph, for example. And there would be no polygamy, no racism, and no blood atonement suicide pacts if you break your covenants and disobey your husband. None of those would have been our condition, and I don't think Mormons realize that. And that if we had stuck to the right thing, which would have been not murdering Joseph Smith and not framing him to go to prison all the time, because that's what happened. Is Brigham Young's Danites would cause problems, and Joseph Smith, being the captain of the ship, would be arrested as the one orchestrating all of this. And so I can see him being exceedingly frustrated, not understanding why everybody's trying to have him locked up when he hasn't done anything. And so, yeah. But again, it still would have resulted in what happened, because he made the choice long ago to give up his money digging ways and try to save America and warn America of the impending threat and doom that was coming. And I've already done those videos to explain that. And so, because of his choice to warn the world, to carry on the message of William Morgan, it was inevitable that the enemy that he was trying to warn about would infiltrate his organization and have him murdered, and thus take us on a different path into darkness and apostasy and doom and where we are now. And so, as much as we all are a result of that bad decision, it was still the right decision to make. And so, in that sense, not choosing Leanne worked out better for me, or at least I was shown mercy, so that the path was paved to make it better than had I done the right thing in the first place. And that's what Spencer W. Kimball, in his book Miracle of Forgiveness, does not get. Is that he says it's better to have never committed sin. And I'm not talking about committing sin. I'm talking about making choices that affect your life decision, your life path. And yes, committing sin will do that, but I'm not talking about, experimentation with orgies and murder and stealing and whatever in order to find out the hard way that those were not the right choices to make in life. I'm talking about simply saying, I'm going to choose this person to marry rather than this person who is actually the better choice to marry. And so, Stephanie in the beginning was perfectly fine and good in the beginning. It's just that I didn't get to know her as I did Leanne. And, and she ended up setting things in motion to force me down her path that she wanted to go, rather than it being a mutual agreed upon decision. And so, in a sense, it was sort of a rebound decision with Stephanie, because I had just gone through the trauma of abandoning Leanne, choosing not to pursue marriage with her. But I sometimes wonder Leanne's life, because of my choice not to marry her. She was all ready to marry me. She would have said yes if I had asked her at any time, in any way, whether cheesy or dull and boring. She would have just said yes and would have been the happiest woman in the world. But she immediately ran off and said yes to a guy that she hadn't even gotten to know, hadn't even dated. The guy would just come by at night, hovering around, waiting for her, stalking her, waiting for her to come home. And he'd have, a big bouquet of roses each and every night as I would drop her off. And she ended up marrying him as her rebound choice. And I realized that she could have done better. I shouldn't have sold myself short, but she could have done better than him. There were plenty of other opportunities of other people to get to know, but she just chose the only other guy who was giving her attention. But that was because her life was packed. She had no time for dating, but she made time to be with me. So I sort of wonder what happened to her. What did her life course result in by my choosing to not pursue a marriage with her, and her then settling for him. And I mean, he was a computer programmer, technician guy, so he would have been perfect financially for her, because computers were taken off back then. So maybe she's doing just fine. And So I hope that's the case. So understand, Mormons, that our path now is inevitable because of what Joseph Smith chose to do with his life in wanting to turn it around and do the right thing. So I hope you realize that, is that you may think that it's God's church now, but you don't know the enemy. And so, yeah. Alrighty, so leave the church. It's bad news, guys. There are bad things going on. Alright, we're over an hour, I think.